I always thought family was supposed to be a place of love, comfort, and belonging. But for me, it was the exact opposite. In my own home, among the people who shared my blood, I was treated like a stranger, like an outsider who never quite belonged. My husband and children always had this bond, a kind of unspoken connection, and no matter how hard I tried, I was the odd one out. They laughed together, whispered secrets in front of me, shared inside jokes, and when I tried to join in, their smiles would stiffen, their laughter would falter, and I would feel that invisible wall rise between us again. It hurt in ways I cannot even begin to describe. You spend years giving your life, your love, your time to your family, and all you get back is indifference, sometimes even cruelty. There were nights when I would lie awake staring at the ceiling, wondering what I had done wrong. Was I not enough as a wife? Did I fail as a mother? Or was there something about me they simply couldn't accept? The worst part was how casual their rejection was. At dinner, my husband, Michael, would ask our son about his studies, or our daughter about her new friends. Their conversations flowed easily, laughter spilling over the table. But when I spoke, it was like the air grew heavy. Their responses were short, dismissive, sometimes not even there at all. My words would dangle in the silence until I stopped trying. I learned to stay quiet, to eat quickly, to excuse myself. One evening, it became unbearable. My daughter Anna had been accepted into a prestigious program at her university. She was glowing with excitement, and rightly so. I was proud of her. I wanted to say it, to hug her, to be part of that moment. But as soon as I opened my mouth, Michael cut across me with his booming voice, pulling her into a tight embrace. "We're so proud of you, sweetheart," he said, his eyes shining. And my son, Mark, clapped her on the back, teasing her, making her laugh. I sat there, frozen, my congratulations stuck in my throat like a lump of glass. No one even looked at me. Do you know what it feels like to be invisible in your own home? To sit there, heart swelling with love and pride, only for it to be swallowed whole because no one cares to hear it. That night, I went upstairs, closed the door, and cried silently into my pillow. My tears didn't surprise me anymore. They were my only real companions. But what they didn't know, what they couldn't even begin to suspect, was that I carried a secret. A secret so powerful, it could shatter the way they looked at me forever. You see, I had spent years pretending to be small, quiet, overlooked. I let them believe I was weak, that I was just the background character in their shining family portrait. But the truth was far more complicated. I wasn't just the timid, unwanted mother they thought I was. I had a past. I had a life long before them, one they couldn't even imagine. Sometimes, late at night, I'd sit by the window and let my mind wander back to those days. The days when I wasn't just a wife or a mother, but someone with influence, with connections, with a strength that didn't need anyone's validation. I had given it all up when I married Michael, thinking love and family were worth more than any recognition or power. But as the years wore on, as I became smaller and smaller in their eyes, I realized the cost of that sacrifice. The secret remained locked away, hidden in the corners of my memory, until that one evening when everything changed. It was a Sunday dinner, and Michael was in one of his moods. He liked to play head of the table, puffed up with importance, as though every meal was some kind of boardroom meeting where he alone set the tone. He started criticizing me. Little barbs wrapped in fake humor. "You know your mother can't cook anything without burning it." He chuckled, making Anna and Mark laugh. I forced a smile, my cheeks burning, even though I had spent hours perfecting that very meal. "Maybe next time you should just let us order in, Mom," Mark added, smirking. Their laughter was sharp, cutting through me. I lowered my gaze, pushing food around my plate, but inside me, something shifted. It was like a crack in the dam. A voice inside whispered enough. That night, I stood in front of the bathroom mirror and stared at my reflection. The woman staring back at me looked tired, broken, defeated. But behind her eyes was something else. A flicker, a spark I thought I had lost forever. They had no idea who I truly was. They thought I was nothing. But soon, very soon, they were going to find out my secret. And when they did, everything would change. The following morning, I moved through the house like a ghost, but inside me, that spark burned brighter. It wasn't anger alone, it was determination. Years of silence, years of being treated like a stranger in my own family had buried my real self. But that night at the dinner table, their cruel laughter had done something unexpected. It had awakened the part of me I thought was gone forever. Michael left early for work, Anna was busy packing for her trip back to campus, and Mark was sprawled on the sofa, scrolling through his phone. I stood in the kitchen, my hands trembling, not from weakness but from the weight of what I was about to do. My secret had lived in the shadows long enough. It was time to let it breathe. I went upstairs, opened the closet in the guest room, and pulled out an old wooden chest. It had been there for years, collecting dust, ignored by everyone else. To them, it was just junk, another relic of my boring past. But inside that chest lay the truth that would one day force them to see me for who I really was. I lifted the lid, and the smell of old paper and leather filled the air. My fingers brushed over the documents, the photographs, the medals. Memories came flooding back, sharp and vivid. I saw the young woman I once was, confident, sharp-witted, unstoppable. I had walked away from a career, from opportunities most people would envy, because I believed in building a family. I believed in giving them everything I had. And in return, I had been treated like nothing. Mark's voice carried up the stairs. "Mom, did you wash my jacket? I need it for tomorrow." His tone wasn't kind, it was commanding, entitled like I was just his maid. I closed the chest slowly, locking it back into place. A bitter smile curved on my lips. Soon, I thought. Soon, he'll learn exactly who he's speaking to. That evening we had another dinner together, though the air was heavy with tension. I didn't try to make conversation. I didn't try to smile. Instead, I observed. I watched the way Michael leaned back in his chair, smug and comfortable, like a king at his throne. I watched the way Anna and Mark laughed at their own jokes, glancing at me now and then with that same dismissive look that told me I didn't belong. But inside me, I was calm. For the first time in years, I wasn't begging for their attention or affection. I was planning. Anna looked up suddenly, frowning. "Mom, you're awfully quiet. Something wrong?" I met her eyes, and for a moment, she looked unsettled by the way I held her gaze. "Nothing's wrong," I said softly. "In fact, everything is just as it should be." Michael chuckled. "Well, that's a first." He raised his glass and smirked, earning another round of laughter from the children. But this time, their words didn't pierce me. They bounced off me like stones thrown at steel. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, I sat at the dining table alone, the documents from the chest spread out before me. Certificates, letters, official seals, proof of the life I had once led. Proof of the influence I still held if I chose to reclaim it. I thought about the nights I had given up on myself, the countless times I had swallowed my pride just to keep peace in this house. But peace had cost me too much. I wasn't going to pay anymore. The turning point came sooner than I expected. It was a Thursday afternoon when I overheard Michael on the phone. His office door was slightly ajar, and his voice carried down the hall. At first, I wasn't trying to eavesdrop. I was just passing by. But then I caught the words. She doesn't know anything. She's harmless. Just let her be." My steps froze. He was talking about me. I inched closer, my heart thudding. "I've kept her in the dark all these years. She's not exactly bright, if you know what I mean. She'll never find out." His laughter followed, deep and mocking. A cold wave washed over me, followed by a fire so hot it nearly choked me. He had built an entire narrative of me being useless, ignorant, powerless. And he had shared it with others. Who was he speaking to? What secrets had he been hiding from me all these years? I backed away before he could notice me, retreating into the kitchen where I gripped the counter to steady myself. The betrayal dug deep. Not just the mockery, but the realization that he had intentionally kept things from me. Secrets. Lies. And he thought I would never catch on. But he was wrong. The following weekend, Anna and Mark went out with friends, leaving the house quiet. Michael sat in the living room, watching television, completely unaware that I was upstairs, gathering my evidence. I put everything into a neat folder and slipped it into my bag. My hands didn't tremble this time. Instead, they felt steady, precise. That evening, as Michael yawned and stretched, I stood by the doorway. "I'll be stepping out for a while," I said casually. He barely looked at me. "Don't be long." I walked out of the house with a calm smile, but inside, my pulse raced with adrenaline. For the first time in decades, I wasn't walking away from myself. I was walking back toward who I used to be. Toward the woman they had all forgotten, or maybe never even knew. And as I drove into the night, the folder resting beside me, one thought echoed in my mind. They thought I was nothing. They thought I was invisible. But they were about to find out my secret. And when the truth came out, it would turn their entire world upside down. The drive felt endless, though it was only 30 minutes. My hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, my thoughts racing faster than the car itself. I hadn't stepped foot into this part of the city in years, and yet everything about it still felt familiar. The old buildings, the narrow streets lit by tired lamps, the hum of life that never seemed to sleep, it all stirred something inside me. Memories, sharp and unrelenting, like ghosts rising from the past. I parked outside a modest but well-kept brick building and sat there for a moment, staring up at the dark windows. My heart pounded, not with fear but with anticipation. This was the place where my past was buried, where the parts of me I had locked away still lingered, waiting to be claimed again. I climbed the steps and knocked on the door. It opened a few seconds later to reveal a man with graying hair and sharp eyes that instantly softened when they met mine. "Clara," he said, his voice full of surprise and something else. "Respect. After all these years." "Hello, Daniel," I said softly. Daniel had once been my closest colleague, back when I wasn't just Michael's wife or Anna and Mark's mother. Back when I was a strategist for one of the largest nonprofit organizations in the country, working on international projects that changed real lives. I wasn't just someone who cooked dinners and washed laundry. I had been a leader, someone who was listened to, someone who mattered. He ushered me inside quickly, almost as though he was afraid I might change my mind. The apartment was neat, books stacked on every surface, papers scattered across a large oak desk. Nothing about Daniel had changed, still meticulous, still sharp. "I thought you were gone for good," he said, pouring me a glass of water. "You disappeared. No explanations, no goodbyes, just vanished into family life. And now, suddenly here you are." I took the glass but didn't drink. My throat was tight with emotions I wasn't ready to release. I thought I made the right choice. I thought if I gave everything to my family, they'd love me. They'd appreciate me. But I was wrong, Daniel. They don't see me at all. His eyes darkened. "And now you want to come back?" I shook my head. "No. I don't want to come back to who I was. I want to show them who I really am. They think I'm nothing, Daniel. They laugh at me. Even Michael, he mocks me behind my back, tells people I'm stupid. I can't let it go on anymore." He leaned back, studying me. "So what's the plan?" The weight of the folder in my bag seemed heavier as I placed it on the table between us. I kept everything. Proof of my work, my contacts, my projects. They think I was just sitting at home all those years, but they don't know the woman they've dismissed still has power. And I intend to use it. Daniel opened the folder, scanning the papers with widening eyes. "This is Clara. This is gold. You could walk into any boardroom tomorrow and they'd put you in charge. Do you realize that?" I smiled faintly. I don't want to walk into a boardroom. I want to walk back into my home and have them look at me differently. I want them to know what it feels like to underestimate someone, only to realize too late how wrong they were. For hours, Daniel and I talked. About my old work, about the people we both knew, about the opportunities still waiting if I wanted them. But more than that, we talked about strategy. How to reveal the truth in a way that would leave Michael, Anna, and Mark no choice but to respect me. I didn't just want to tell them who I was. I wanted them to see it, to feel it, to understand it so deeply that they could never look at me the same way again. By the time I left Daniel's apartment, the sky was beginning to lighten with the first hints of dawn. My chest felt lighter, my steps firmer. For the first time in years, I had a plan. When I walked through the front door of my house, Michael was still asleep, snoring loudly, oblivious. I stood there for a long moment, watching him. This man who had once made me feel like I was everything, who now treated me like I was nothing. He had no idea what was coming. None of them did. The first move came 2 days later. Anna had invited a group of her friends over for dinner before she left for campus again. The house was buzzing with laughter, chatter, the smell of food filling the air. I stayed in the kitchen, preparing everything, silent and efficient as always. To them, I was background noise. Until one of Anna's friends, bright-eyed, curious, wandered into the kitchen. "Mrs. Turner?" she asked, holding up a book she'd pulled from the shelf in the living room. "Is this yours?" I read the author's name, and I swear it matches yours. I froze. My heart skipped. That book. I had almost forgotten it was still there. A published piece of research I had written years ago, tucked away among Michael's things. "Yes," I said, finally turning to her. "That was mine." Her eyes widened. "This is incredible. My professor actually recommended this in class last semester. I can't believe you wrote it." Before I could respond, Anna's voice called from the living room, sharp and impatient. "Maggie, what are you doing in there?" The girl smiled at me, oblivious to the storm that had just begun brewing.
"Your mom's a published researcher?"
"Did you know that?" The room went silent. Anna appeared at the doorway, her expression confused. "What are you talking about?" I stepped out from the kitchen, wiping my hands on a towel. My heart was steady, my voice calm. "She's right, that's one of mine." Michael looked up from the table, frowning. Mark raised an eyebrow, almost amused. And in that thick silence, as their friends stared at me with newfound curiosity and admiration, I saw the first crack in their certainty. They thought I was nothing. But that night, for the first time, I saw a flicker of doubt in their eyes. And it was only the beginning. The silence after my revelation was deafening. Anna stood frozen in the doorway, her friends whispering to one another as they passed the book around, their eyes flicking from the cover to me with a mixture of surprise and admiration. Michael cleared his throat, forcing a laugh that sounded too sharp, too forced. Old work? He muttered dismissively, waving his hand. Clara dabbled in some things before she settled down. Nothing worth making a fuss about. The dismissal stung, but this time I didn't shrink back. I stood straighter, my chin lifted. It wasn't dabbling, Michael. That book was cited in international policy discussions. Universities still use it. A hush fell over the room again. Anna's friend looked at me with genuine respect. That's amazing, she said. Why didn't you ever tell us? My lips curved into a slow smile. Because no one ever asked. Anna shifted uncomfortably, her face flushed. Mom, why wouldn't you say something like that before? Her tone wasn't cruel, but it carried an edge of disbelief, as if she couldn't reconcile the woman who cooked her meals with the author of something her peers studied in school. Michael interrupted, his voice sharp. Enough. Let's not bore our guests with old stories. Clara, bring out the dessert. The command, the tone, the way he cut me off in front of everyone. It was meant to humiliate, to re-establish control. But it only fueled the fire inside me. I met his eyes across the table, holding his gaze until he looked away, and for the first time, I saw something there I hadn't seen before. Innies. I brought out the dessert, but the atmosphere had shifted. Anna's friends kept sneaking glances at me, their curiosity spilling into questions. What else have you done? Did you write other things? Did you work in that field? Each question chipped away at the wall my family had built around me, and though Michael tried to change the subject, his efforts only made him look smaller. The kids noticed, the friends noticed, and somewhere deep inside, I think Anna and Mark noticed too. Later that night, after the guests had gone and the dishes were piled high in the sink, Michael confronted me in the kitchen. His voice was low, tight with anger. What the hell was that? I dried my hands slowly, not meeting his eyes. The truth. You embarrassed me, he hissed. Bragging in front of the kids like that, in front of strangers. That's not who you are anymore. I turned to him, my voice calm but sharp as glass. That's not who you let me be anymore. There's a difference. His jaw tightened, his fists clenching at his sides. Don't start something you can't finish, Clara. I stepped closer, my eyes locked on his. I already have. For days after, the tension in the house was unbearable. Anna avoided me as though she couldn't decide what to think. Mark rolled his eyes whenever I spoke, though the arrogance in his voice had dulled. And Michael, he grew quieter, but his glances lingered on me with suspicion, as if he feared what else I might reveal. I didn't stop. I began leaving pieces of my past in plain sight, an old certificate on the mantel, framed photographs from conferences I had attended, letters of recognition tucked onto bookshelves. Little by little, I forced them to confront the version of me they had ignored. Then came the evening that shattered everything. We were sitting at the dinner table again, the four of us. The air was heavy, no laughter, no conversation. Finally, Anna broke the silence. Mom, why did you give it up? If you were doing all those amazing things, why would you just stop? Her question wasn't cruel this time. It was genuine, tinged with something I hadn't heard from her in years. Curiosity. I put down my fork and looked at her. Because I thought family mattered more. I thought giving up my dreams would make all of you happy. I thought I could be enough as a wife and mother, even if I wasn't myself anymore. Anna's eyes widened, guilt flickering across her face. Mark shifted in his seat uncomfortably, avoiding my gaze. Michael slammed his hand on the table. Don't put this on them, Clara. Don't twist this into some sob story. You chose this. No one forced you. I turned to him slowly, my voice steady. Did I? Or did you convince me that my worth only existed in this house? Did you strip me down piece by piece until I believed it? His face flushed red. Careful, he snapped. But I didn't stop. You've spent years mocking me, belittling me, treating me like a fool. And I let you. But I'm done, Michael. I'm done pretending I'm less than what I am. The table was silent. Anna stared at me, tears welling in her eyes. Mark shifted again, his usual bravado slipping. And Michael, for the first time in years, he looked powerless. That night, I lay awake in bed, listening to Michael's restless breathing beside me. My chest was tight with a mix of fear and exhilaration. The secret was no longer mine alone. The cracks in their perception were widening. And soon, everything would come crashing down, because I hadn't revealed the full extent of my secret yet. Not even close. The days that followed were a storm beneath a fragile calm. On the surface, life went on as usual: meals, routines, conversations about school and work. But under it all was tension, thick and suffocating. Michael tried harder than ever to assert his authority. Every word from him dripped with sarcasm. Every gesture an attempt to remind me of my place. But it was too late. The balance had shifted. He felt it. The children felt it. And most importantly, I felt it. One evening, I received a phone call that would accelerate everything. Daniel's voice was urgent. Clara, there's an opening on the advisory board. The organization needs someone with your expertise. They'd welcome you back with open arms. This is your chance. My pulse quickened. Daniel, I don't know if I can step into that world again. You already have, he said firmly. The moment you walked back into my apartment, you came back. Don't let them hold you prisoner in your own house any longer. When I hung up, I sat in silence, staring at the wall. For years, I had been invisible, treated like a stranger in my own family. Now an entire world was inviting me back, valuing me for what I truly was. I knew then that I couldn't just reclaim my old self for me. I had to do it in front of them. They had to see the woman they had dismissed rise again. That weekend, I told Michael I was attending a meeting. He raised an eyebrow. Since when do you have meetings? I smiled faintly. Since now. He scoffed, muttering something under his breath, but I didn't wait for his approval. I walked out the door with my head high, leaving him fuming in silence. The meeting was electrifying. Faces I hadn't seen in years lit up when I walked in. There were handshakes, embraces, voices filled with genuine admiration. Clara, we've missed you. You haven't aged a day. We need your insight on this project. For the first time in decades, I felt alive. I spoke and people listened. My opinions carried weight. I wasn't invisible here. I was seen, valued, respected. When I came home late that evening, Michael was waiting in the living room, his expression dark. Where were you? I set my bag down calmly. At a meeting? With who? People who respect me, I replied evenly. His jaw tightened. Don't get ideas, Clara. You belong here, with this family. I stepped closer, my eyes burning into his. I gave myself to this family, Michael, and all you gave me in return was mockery. I don't belong to you. I never did. The next morning, the children noticed the shift too. I dressed differently, not in my usual faded clothes, but in the professional attire I once wore so naturally. Anna watched me with wide eyes. Mom, where are you going? To work, I answered simply. She blinked. You mean, like a job? Yes, Mark laughed, though it sounded forced. What kind of job would even hire you now? I turned to him, my voice calm but cutting. The kind that still studies the papers I wrote before you were born. The kind that respects me more than you ever have. His smirk faltered. That night at dinner, I let them know the truth. I had accepted a position on the advisory board. It wasn't just a job, it was a seat at the table where major decisions were made, where voices like mine shaped outcomes that reached across nations. Anna stared at me in disbelief. You're really doing this?
Yes,
I said firmly. And I won't let anyone diminish it, not even my family. Michael slammed his fist against the table. You're abandoning us. I met his fury with steel. No. You abandoned me a long time ago. Now I'm just taking myself back. The words hung heavy in the air. Anna's eyes filled with tears, guilt flickering in her gaze. Mark looked away, suddenly quiet. And Michael looked like a man watching his grip on everything slip through his fingers. The days turned into weeks. My involvement with the board grew, and my absence at home became noticeable. Suddenly, the meals weren't magically prepared, the laundry wasn't folded, the little details of their lives weren't taken care of. They felt my absence, and for the first time, they began to understand the weight I had carried all those years. One evening I came home late to find the kitchen a mess, dishes piled high, takeout boxes scattered across the counters. Anna sat at the table, her hair unkempt, frustration written all over her face. Mark was arguing with Michael about laundry. The house looked chaotic, unraveling. Anna looked up at me, her voice small. Mom, how did you do it? All these years, work, house, us, everything. I set my bag down and walked over, placing a hand on her shoulder. Because I loved you. Even when you didn't see me, I loved you enough to hold everything together. But love doesn't mean I have to erase myself. Her eyes brimmed with tears. For the first time in years, she hugged me, not out of obligation, but with real emotion. Michael stood there silent, his pride crumbling. He had mocked me, dismissed me, controlled me, but now he was powerless, watching as the children slowly began to see the truth for themselves. And deep down, he knew what was coming next. Because I wasn't finished. Not yet. The shift in the house was undeniable. Where once there had been mocking laughter and careless dismissals, there was now silence, unease, even a hint of fear. They had treated me like a stranger in my own home, but now they were forced to reckon with the truth. The stranger was never me. It was the version of myself they had chosen to see. Michael tried, of course, to regain control. He'd mutter under his breath about my silly little meetings, or try to make jabs about my second life crisis. But his words had lost their power. Every time he spoke, the children glanced at him with discomfort, as though they saw through him for the first time. His authority was slipping away, thread by thread, and he knew it. One evening, after another long day at the board, I returned home to find Anna waiting in the kitchen. Her eyes were red, as if she had been crying. "Mom," she whispered, "I owe you an apology." I set my bag down carefully.
For what?
"For everything. For not seeing you. For treating you like you were just here to serve us. I don't know why we did that. I don't know why I laughed at Dad's jokes or rolled my eyes at you. You deserved better." Her voice cracked and she reached for me. I pulled her into my arms, my own eyes burning. "You were young, Anna. You followed the lead of the people around you. But you see now, that's what matters." She clung to me, her tears dampening my shoulder. And in that embrace, I felt something I thought had been lost forever. A bridge rebuilding between us. Mark was slower to change. He still carried that arrogance, that youthful invincibility. But even he couldn't ignore the reality forever. The moment came when he failed a class at university and came home frustrated, angry. He lashed out, blaming everyone but himself. I listened quietly until he finally spat. "You don't know what it's like, Mom. You've never had to work hard for anything." The words hit me like a slap, but instead of shrinking, I stood tall. I walked to the drawer, pulled out one of my old medals from international recognition, and set it on the table in front of him. "That's what I earned before you were born," I said evenly. "While you were still learning your alphabet, I was writing papers that shaped national policy. While you were playing in the yard, I was working 16-hour days to make a difference. Don't you dare tell me I don't know hard work." Mark stared at the medal, then at me, his mouth opening and closing like he couldn't find the words. And for the first time, I saw it in his eyes, the crack in his arrogance, respect, reluctant, but real. Michael was the hardest. He grew bitter, restless. He hated seeing the children shift toward me. Hated watching the balance of the household tilt away from his control. One night, he confronted me, his voice low and venomous. "You think you've won, don't you? Walking around here like some queen, flashing your little achievements. This family doesn't need your old glory. They need stability. They need me." I met his fury with calm. "They needed love. They needed unity. And you gave them division, mockery, control. You don't represent stability, Michael. You represent the cage I finally broke out of." His face twisted, but I didn't back down. "I gave up everything for you once." I continued, my voice steady, "but I will never do it again. You can sneer, you can shout, but you can't erase who I am. Not anymore." The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by the sound of his ragged breathing. For the first time, he looked at me and realized the truth: he had no power left over me. The weeks that followed transformed everything. My work grew, my presence in the board was celebrated, and invitations began pouring in for conferences, lectures, and interviews. I was no longer just Clara, the overlooked wife and mother. I was Clara Turner, the strategist, the leader, the woman the world still respected. But the real victory wasn't in the applause of strangers. It was in my own home. Anna began seeking my advice, not Michael's. Mark, though still stubborn, started showing signs of humility, asking questions instead of mocking. And Michael, he grew smaller, quieter, his once booming voice reduced to mutters that no one heeded anymore. One evening, as I prepared dinner, not out of obligation, but because I wanted to, I looked around the table. Anna chatting animatedly with me about her studies, Mark listening for once, Michael silent. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like a stranger. I felt like the head of this family, the role I had always deserved but had been denied. And yet there was no gloating in me. My revenge wasn't in crushing them. It was in forcing them to see me, to recognize the truth they had ignored. As we finished our meal, Anna reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Mom," she said softly, "I don't know why we couldn't see it before. But we see you now, and I promise, we'll never forget who you are again." The tears pricked my eyes, but I smiled. That's all I ever wanted. Because in the end, the sweetest revenge wasn't making them suffer. It was making them finally understand. It was reclaiming my place, my dignity, my worth. I had been treated like a stranger in my own family. But now they knew my secret. And they would never look at me the same way again.